Lights going live. Okay, YouTube, it's Clear Vision Wednesday time. I am Claudia Mühlenweg. I'm the creator of the Naturally Clear Vision Method. And I have a super special guest today. He's also a really good friend of mine. He's also a Bates teacher, also a natural vision improvement teacher. His name is Nathan Oxenfeld. And you might have heard of him before. He is the founder of Integral Eyesight. He also co-produced a really important film, a documentary called Vision 2020 from Eyesight to Insight. He has 2 podcasts. He has the Better Eyesight Magazine podcast, which is the Bates magazine, kind of like 100 years later, the podcast, and the Naked Eye podcast. So welcome, Nathan. I'm going to bring you up on stage here. Welcome, welcome.
Hey, Claudia. Thank you so much for having me today. Really excited to be here.
You're so welcome. And your topic today, the reason that you're on today is, first of all, I could have you on every week, but today we want to talk about colors, and you're very passionate about colors and how can colors improve your vision? Because when we look at, I'm going to bring up here, this is what we usually think, right? Eye charts. So usually, well, there's some colors on this one, but usually they're black and white. And so tell us a little bit more about your background on have colors become such an important piece of your teaching?
Yeah, it's, it might not be kind of the first thing you think of when you learn about natural vision improvement or the Bates method. A lot of times people are a little bit, like you said, Claudia, a little bit more interested in their visual acuity and their ability to see things clearly and focus on details up close, details in the distance. And that was my main interest when I learned about natural vision improvement. I was myopic with astigmatism. Those were my refractive errors. So I was really interested in reducing those and reversing those gradually over time and seeing if I could see clearly without my glasses. But along the way, I actually noticed not only improvements with my visual acuity, but also my color perception. Because when I was younger, I found out I had a version of red-green color blindness. It was brought to my attention when I would have friends over and I would have like an alarm clock in my room, like a digital display with the time on there. And to me, it looked orange, but to everybody else, it looked green. And so that was kind of the first time I was called my attention to that. And then I actually looked at those official colorblind tests, those charts called the Ishihara tests, where it's spots of color and there's like a number in there. And if you're colorblind, you can't see the number. But if you have good color perception, it's right there and easy to see. So that was kind of a mixed bag. I could see some of the numbers, but not all of them. So I just kind of was curious when I started working with my vision teacher, Jerry Ann Tabor. I asked her, hey, is there anything you can do for my color vision? Can that improve as well? And she gave me some promising, possibilities to work with. It wasn't like a primary thing I was working on, but like I said, as I worked on improving my vision and getting off my glasses, it seemed like the world became more colorful. And actually, I don't know about you, Claudia, but that was one of the first things that I noticed when I started going without my glasses. Was with my glasses on, I could see details. When I would take them off, I would lose the details in the distance, but it seemed like colors seemed a little more vivid. So before I could actually see my chart clearer and the details of people's faces, I was starting to see colors better. So it was almost like a little precursor, like, hey, this is a little preview of your bigger vision improvements coming, but first enjoy the colors coming in.
That is so interesting. Yeah, for me, I was a designer in my former life, and so colors were always something I took for granted. You're right, like colors were really important to me, but I never really thought of improving my color. Like my color vision was really great. And there's also these tests that I love to do. I forgot what they're called, but they're basically contrast acuity tests where you get like, I should know this now, I forgot the name. You have like the little, like 10, or it depends on the test, like 20 different greens, and they all initially, you're like, one is different. It's really easy in the beginning. You're like, oh, that's different, that's different. And then it gets more and more and more fine-tuned. And as we age, we lose some of that color perception. But for me, it was the same way. Like colors were always like that was like a given. That was like, okay, I'm good. I can see colors. I'm really good with colors. But then my visual acuity and my depth perception, that was like, I was the one that always hit her head. I was clumsy because my convergent squint. So anyway, how did you get into, I know you started vision improvement. You've done this, you've also been doing this for like a decade. You had like a -3, -4 myopia or something initially, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, I was working for a while by myself, just, reading books and trying to figure it out solo. But then I did actually work with a Bates teacher in California, Jerry Ann Tabor, and that really took me all the way with it. And I went through her teacher training to actually get certified to teach this. And so, yeah, it's been really gratifying to not only get the benefits for myself, but then to be able to share them and see it happen for other people. In my students, it's not a very common issue. People don't come to me specifically to see more colors or improve their color vision, but it's kind of a nice little side effect or benefit that a lot of people report. I even had one student who, before she started working with me, she dreamt in grayscale. So her dreams were colorless. And then through the Bates method, her dreams were in color. So
so cool. But yeah. I mean, being aware that you dream in black and white, sometimes I tell people, that there's no color perception at night, and they're like, what? Like, what? And I guess we're also spoiled with not spoiled, but we have this light pollution, so that a lot of times, but anyway, that is so interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, and before, I agree with you that, like, in order to see colors, we have to have enough light to reflect the colors back to us. And that was a kind of a profound thing for me too. Before I got into the vision work, I was getting a degree in anthropology, and I was doing a research paper on color and how different cultures around the world perceive colors differently and have different words for different shades and stuff like that. And the fact that, I don't know, one of my biggest takeaways from that was that, looking at a tree, right, with the green leaves and things, you might just think, oh, well, it's green. But the way that the light comes in and passes through the trees, and maybe a cloud comes over the sky and then it becomes bright again, it's not just that, the light is changing, but it's almost like the leaf itself is changing, the color that's coming into you. It has this potential to make the world take on this more almost magical quality when you start to look at color as this kind of living, breathing, dynamic thing, as opposed to just kind of like, colors are out there and they're all static. But what maybe a good sort of fork in the road right here is one thing I wanted to kind of talk about today is the difference between like how we can use physical colors to improve our vision, and then also how we can use mental colors. Because that dream example, I think, would probably fall more in the category of mental colors, because your eyes are closed, you're in a dark room, there's no light, you're not actually experiencing physical color, but there's still an experience of color through your memory and imagination and inner vision. And I think that might be a kind of a good simple way to kind of break down our talk today, is like, focus on what we can do physically with colors, and then also maybe some strategies for how to get colors inside as well.
I think that's a really great idea, and it's so fascinating. I'm sorry, I just had this thought, like, I'm building a little guest house and I'm looking at paint swatches, and it looked like, oh my God, this one is so much darker than my main house. I like that. And then I peeled it off and held it on my paint, and it was exactly the same shade. And you're like, wow, I know this. I know how the brain, tricks us so much into like looking at colors. And so, yeah, I'm super interested in this and in your discovery. I didn't even know you studied this in anthropology, that you did a paper on color. So, yeah, do you want to start with the physical aspect of color, or yeah, okay, let's do that.
Sure, yeah, I think that's a good place to start, because that's, I think, what most of us are more familiar with. And I think a good way to kind of even further break it down, even within the physical category, is we've got, sources of light, color that comes from light. But then we've also got reflected light, or like pigmentary color, like you just brought up with your guest house, these color swatches and stuff. So I think people can start to already differentiate between, right, the sun is creating light, and the sun contains all the colors. I've got this, like orange light back here, these salt lamps, right? These are sources of light, and it's coming to you directly into the eyes and absorbing into the retina. So that to me is more of like the light is carrying the color to you right from the source. But then there's also reflected light. So like maybe my shirt, right? So light is hitting my shirt, but then the shirt is absorbing the majority of the light, but it's bouncing and reflecting off just a few of the wavelengths, which you perceive as the colors that enter your eye. So I think maybe not everybody's, familiar with that subtle difference there between, is it a direct light coming into the eye, or is it a more kind of reflected light that's bouncing off back at me?
And that's a great point, but because even computers are backlit, right? Like, so the computers they're not reflecting light. So that's a really good distinction, or like film lights or any kind of light bulbs that have a tint. That's different than the reflection. I love that distinguishing point. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's a great example, Claudia, because I bring that up a lot. People ask, well, should I read on my Kindle? Should I read on my iPad? Or should I read on my book, right? And I think the biggest difference there is one is a direct light source coming right into the eye. The other is a little more gentle because you've got ambient light hitting the book and then reflecting back at you. So, just as we keep going, you can think about that subtle difference right there. But to get, more specific with it, if we think about, what color is, it's just different, vibrations of light, different bandwidths or frequencies of light there. And they have different properties, and we've got the visible light spectrum the human eye can perceive, kind of that rainbow Roy G. Biv kind of thing. And it might even be helpful for people to even look up, the visible wavelength, the visible light spectrum, and just kind of look at some of the diagrams and things that just, so you can see how the red light has this, sort of lower frequency and longer wavelength. And then as you go up the spectrum, orange, yellow, red, blue, indigo, violet, green, blue, indigo, violet, it gets into that higher frequency, shorter wavelength. So we just want to understand how the different colors affect not only our eyes, but maybe also our skin or our body or our brains and our energy and circadian rhythms and all that good stuff. So maybe we could start with the red side of the spectrum. First of all, I just want to mention that this is so unique. It's so individualized in terms of, I like it when people don't just follow the book, and say, okay, well, red means this, orange means this. Yes, that we do have some parameters to kind of jump off from, but you might find that the descriptions, of red don't really fit with you, or, maybe you have a different relationship with it. So I do want to remind people to kind of approach this in a very individualized way and just kind of tune into how you feel. Because I do think that color is one of these nonverbal languages. Like when I was going through my yoga teacher training, we were learning some Sanskrit and some mantras, and which is a vibratory language. It's not necessarily like English or these other languages that are based on the symbols and the meaning of it. It's more about the actually making the sound and the vibration of that Sanskrit. So it's kind of the same with color. Color is this kind of non-language based, vibratory, based language, and it kind of carries different feelings and emotions with it. So even just looking at red things, if you can maybe even like locate a red object around you. So I've got these pinhole glasses here that have red frames on them. So, if I just look at that red color, you just want to take a moment to like tune in with yourself. What does that red color make me feel? Does it remind me of anything? Am I averse to it? Do I want to look away from it? Am I drawn into it? Do I want to look at it more? And essentially we can do this with the different colors of the spectrum and get a little bit of information about how they affect us. And we've even got options of not just looking at things that are already red, but even like making things red that aren't red with things like red lenses, you put these glasses on and now everything's red. And so this kind of takes it to another level of, okay, how do I feel when I'm in a red world, not just looking at one red thing, but there you go. And people can usually feel immediately like either like, whoa, this is really cool, or like, oh, I don't like this. This makes me feel uncomfortable. So it's really, once again, about feeling it for yourself and seeing if you find a color that feels good, you can definitely keep going with it. A lot of people, when they put the green glasses on, it actually makes them feel uncomfortable, maybe even like a little nauseous a little bit. Sometimes people associate color green with like being sick. But other people, will get a lot of relaxation from that, because sometimes green is used to help like reduce headaches and migraines. There was a study not too long ago about using green light to help with chronic migraines. And, coming back to the topic of the talk, can colors improve vision? Well, I don't know if anybody's here ever had a really bad migraine or a bad headache. It's like you can't even open your eyes.
Totally, yeah.
Right. So if you can, you're really light sensitive and you need to be in a dark room, but if you can get a gentle green light going, or you can start to, work with the colors, and maybe that has a positive effect on the migraine, all of a sudden your vision's back, and maybe even, the migraines come less often. So it's things like that where it might be a little bit of an indirect pathway, but I love it when people explore these connections of the potentials of the colors.
No, that is super interesting. And it's funny, the red was definitely very different feeling when I had that on than the green. And, in society, red is always attention, it's sales, it's stop signs. It's like, look, stop the car, where this green is go. And it's like, the nature is green. And I think green is one of the most relaxing colors for the eyes, actually, because, nature is usually green. And I think I read somewhere that our eyes developed to see red from like 100 yards, like super far away because of berries, or when we were hunters and gatherers. And red usually meant some kind of either danger, like a dangerous mushroom, or it meant some kind of nourishing food. So, but anyway, going, you're here to talk about this. Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, and like you said, there's these common, like somewhat commonly, somewhat common attributes about the colors that we just either have heard before or we have our own sort of intuition with. And like, for example, the darker end of the spectrum, the blues and the indigos and the violets and things like that tend to have this more, kind of calming, soothing, cooling effect. And it's also associated with, within the yogic system, the third eye chakra is this more indigo purple color. So it's kind of associated with getting into deeper states of meditation and calm and peace, which, according to the Bates method, a lot of these vision problems are rooted in mental strain and an inability to kind of relax the mind. And so if we can get some help with some color to bring us into that state, I really see that there's some potential there. And just if anybody's curious about these little different colored lenses, I got this set on Amazon. They're like $10 each. And so you can either get the whole set or you can just pick whatever colors you want. But like I said, it's optional to do these lenses. I think when we get straight to the Bates system, he didn't really encourage people to put colored glasses on or work with specific colors in the way we're talking about today, per se. We're going to get into the mental side here in a minute. With the Bates approach to light and color, it's, in my opinion, mainly about the sunning. And that's white light. The sun produces this white light. It's full spectrum. It contains the entire visible light spectrum that humans could see all the colors and beyond. Ultraviolet, infrared, X-ray, everything, all those, beyond what we can even perceive. So, most of it gets filtered out through the atmosphere, but when we're interested in using, more of the Bates approaches to get the colors in and the light in, we step outside and we just absorb all the colors at once, Roy G. Biv and beyond, eyes closed and just letting that light come in through the closed eyelids. And the way that I teach the sunning is with sun sandwiches, where we alternate into the dark for 5 or 10 or 15 seconds, light 5 or 10 or 15 seconds with the movement. And when you do that, when I first started doing sunning, I just did sunning for, let's say, I don't know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever felt good. And then I would go inside and I would do 3 or 4 or 5 minutes of palming. So it was kind of like light and then dark. But when I did light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, it actually gave me more of a journey through the color spectrum, because every time you go from the light to the dark, it kind of fades, and you might actually experience some colors on the way from white to black. And then when you come back from palming into sunning, you go from the black to the white, and you might notice some colors along the way there. I also did some one-eyed sunning, where it was kind of like having one palm over one eye was like adding some black to my color palette, because with both eyes, it would just be a nice bright color. But with some black in the palette, it gives me access to different hues. And you might experience it a little bit differently on one eye versus the other eye. But I would say and this might be a good segue into the more mental color thing, the inner color. I'd say that the sunning variation that gave me the most colors is the strobing.
Mm-hmm.
And the official way to do it is with like a tool, like a slot shifter, a piece of cardboard with slots in it, and your eyes are closed, and you move it like this, and it creates this flickering light, this kind of strobe light effect. And obviously you want to be mindful if you have any kind of, sensitivity to that, or any kind of epilepsy symptoms or anything like that. But you can, if you don't have that, you can use your fingers, right? So you can just wave your spread out fingers gently in front of your closed eyelids, side to side or up and down. But I find that when I, find a good rhythm with the two hands and a good direction and a good speed, I start to see so many colors and even sometimes patterns when I do that. So that one's like pretty intriguing and entertaining just to kind of watch as you do it. But I think it's a good segue, because you're working with that sunlight, but your eyes are closed. So it's kind of the entry point into how you can see colors with your eyes closed. And so, yeah. Do you want to maybe kind of shift gears into the inner version?
Yeah, I'm interested because I also explore, obviously and teach the strobing and the sun damages and doing one or the other. And that always bothered me, because I had this, like you said, when you're from the sun, you get these beautiful colors, you get turquoise and red and all kinds of colors. And it always bothered me because it said, the longer the after images stay, the more strain you feel. And I didn't always feel that, but then I was really trying hard. And this is the mental aspect to okay, I want to see black. I want to see black. I don't want to see these after images anymore. And this happens mostly when you do sun gazing, which I do, where you look in the sun versus just doing it with closed eyes. And so I'm interested to hear your opinion about that. And also, because the more you strain then to see black, the more the colors persist. And now I'm, when I do see them, I enjoy them, and they usually fade pretty quickly. But I'm just curious what your opinion is about that. And what else did I want to say? Yeah, the strobing is, I just usually do the hands just because you have them with you. I always think of how can we make it super easy to do these things, but having one of those shifters is definitely a cool idea. But yeah, what do you think about when it comes to there is the physical aspect of your cone cells or your cells being, getting that light from the sun. So there is an actual reaction, like an after image, or if you've looked at it, or even an eye chart, right? If you look at that in the bright sun and you close your eyes, you might see it reverse with white letters and black. So yeah, tell us a little bit more what you think of coming to the mental point of view.
Yeah. There's, I love how Dr. Bates always gave us both sides of it. He gave us the physical explanation and the mental explanation. And specifically with the after images, with the physical one, like you said, physically light is entering the eye, landing on certain photoreceptors, and if they are receiving a certain signal for long enough, they get sort of fatigued. And if you close your eyes, it's like they're remembering that, after image there. One thing that might come in here is the visual purple. It's a pigment in your retina where in the presence of light, it breaks down. And in the presence of darkness, it regenerates and reforms. And so when you are doing the sunning, it's essentially kind of breaking down the visual purple. And then you go into the palming or you close your eyes and it's starting to regenerate again, which sometimes isn't instantaneous. It's kind of like when you go into a dark movie theater during the day and you don't have visual purple because you've just been out in the sun, you go inside and you can't really see that much. But then within 5, 10, 15 minutes, it's like you can see much more in the dark room. But then when you go back outside in the sun, it's like, oh, that's super bright because it's breaking down that visual purple and you're adjusting to the day vision.
Except that goes a lot faster. Adjusting to the day vision usually goes like super fast. And like you said, the rhodopsin, right? The visual purple, the rhodopsin, and which, so that's super interesting about, what you just said, because sometimes people say, I can't see anything at night. I'm like, well, it takes our eyes, our rod cells, so like up to 30 minutes, I think, in complete darkness to have the most, detailed, as much as we can. But that's not, I know that's not the topic today. It's not night vision. So keep going, Nathan.
Well, so the other, that's sort of the physical anatomically, what's going on. But then on the mental side, Bates was able to differentiate another subtle level where some people would do the sunning and get after images and they would kind of stress out about it and be like, oh no, I just hurt my eyes. And turns out the after images would linger longer in those people.
That's what I mean, because I was trying to push them away. I was like, no, I don't want to see them, right?
Right. There's some fear involved and we kind of latch onto them versus, his suggestion was look at the dark areas, think about the color black or, think of a black cat or something. But like you said, not with too much force. And interestingly, those after images fade away very quickly. So there is definitely a mental side of it where, if you go into the sunning practice or the light therapy practice, knowing that the after images are normal and they're going to go away within a few moments, if you relax and don't stress out about it, that's kind of the way to go about it. But even those after images are still physical in nature. And so I definitely do want to take people deeper into the mental colors, because that's actually what Dr. Bates did kind of write the most about, was not just perceiving colors with the eyes open, but actually palming the eyes, which excludes 100% of all light, and then to see colors. And so, if you see colors, they're not physical. There's literally zero light reaching the optic nerve. And yet it is still possible to remember colors, imagine colors, visualize colors. It's not going to be the same as the physical colors, right? You're not actually physically seeing anything at all. That's your eyesight, right? So you palm, you're turning your eyesight off, but you're turning your insight on, which is this inner vision piece, which has nothing to do with the light that's hitting your retinas. So that's why the palming is a great place to practice this, because you're creating this blank canvas. And, if I'm just going to think about a turtle right now, the color that comes to mind is green. I'm not trying to force it. And then the turtle walks over and gets on a log. And now I'm thinking about brown, the bark of the tree. And the turtle goes over and swims over. There's a little lily pad section, and there's these beautiful lotus flowers blooming out of the pond. And now I'm thinking about the pink and the magenta and the violet. And it's more of the essence of the color or the memory of the color. So it's a little bit more, it's a lot less tangible than actually seeing a colored object out there. But if you can just feel a connection with it and a memory of it, you might actually start to feel like you are seeing the color with your mind's eye. And why are we doing this? You know, what is the purpose of this? It's just to relax, essentially, because if we feel like we're not able to do it, that could be a sign that we're trying too hard or we're just straining still. But if we relax and allow that mental color to kind of occupy the mind, that's a good sign. We're on the right track towards relaxation and finding calm and peace. And chances are is when we open up our eyes back up, then maybe the physical colors come in easier. Maybe even some details come in as well. But this is, if anybody's read Dr. Bates's book, this is in the foreword before page 1. There's a little opening section, a little prelogue there called The Fundamental Principle, where he's teaching the fundamental principle of the Bates method, which he called flashing or reverse blinking. But essentially, he asks you to close your eyes, think of a color, and then flash your eyes open to see if it leads to a vision improvement. And so before Bates teaches anything about palming, swinging, sunning, eye charts, any of that stuff, he's getting people to start to realize that something about thinking about something really simple, giving the mind something to focus on, like a color, has the potential to relax not only their eyes, but their mind and their whole nervous system, to the point that without their glasses on, they open up and there's a potential for a clear flash or an experience of better vision because with the help of the color.
And that's the whole point, right? When we relax the mind, mind and brain, yes, that's another whole discussion, but we see in the brain, right? In Dr. Bates always said 90% mind and 10% eyesight. So when we can actually imagine and totally relax thinking about a color. I recently worked with a private client and she was thinking about a colorful, she was in Spain, there were all these poppies and there were yellow flowers and white daisies, and that was so relaxing to her. When she opened her eyes, everything was so clear. It was always this kind of huge shift, and just thinking about that particular picture and imagining it in your mind. But I also, some people I can't imagine anything. I close my eyes and all I see is black. So we didn't prepare for this, but what would you, let's share what Bates would have done. Share with us what Bates would have done if somebody's I can't imagine anything. There's nothing in my mind's eye. It's black, nothing, or white, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's generally when I like to, once again, call people's attention to the difference between their eyesight and their insight, because usually when people say that, they're still operating from their eyesight, not their insight. Mm-hmm. So they're still looking at, well, I'm seeing black because there's no light, I'm not seeing anything. I don't see the turtle. What turtle, And so that if you're stuck in the eyes and you're waiting to actually physically see a picture appear, you'll probably be waiting for a while. But if you just shut that part of the brain down, which is easier said than done, but you just put it on pause and say, no, that's not what this is about. This is about my insight, my inner vision, which is completely separate from my eyeballs. It's my mind's eye, my mind, my brain. And then it helps you access this different side of yourself that is less about, comparing it to the physical experience of eyesight. And it opens you up to maybe a little bit of a different experience with it. And I think another really helpful thing is the other senses. If, because not everybody's visual, some people are more auditory or kinesthetic. So, with that example I gave with the turtle, maybe instead of thinking about what it looks like or the colors, you think about, what does a turtle's shell feel like? Or, what's the temperature of that water that it's swimming around in? Or what's the sound that it makes when it plops into the water from the pond, right? And then all of a sudden, when you take the pressure off of just the eyes and the vision, you might actually, these mental pictures might actually form easier.
You know, that's so interesting, because I would just want to interject with my own experience, because my vision was poor, but my sense of smell was extraordinary as a kid. I actually would smell people's hand, like, to the biggest embarrassment of my mom. They would shake my hand. I would be like a dog, literally sniffing them out. That's a different story. But later on, like I said, colors I took for granted. But when I tried to do palming, and when I began with the Bates method and learned all this, I struggled so much to imagine a color. Like, for me, this was like you said, the biggest strain whatsoever to think of anything visual, because maybe the perfectionism of working as a designer, and they're like, how was that exactly? And I used the sense of smell, because that was easy, right? That was like, I could think of the smell of something and then immerse myself in the word, and then slowly, the other senses would come. So I love that you made that distinction, because even though I am a very visual person, I just had all this strain in my eyes, so that even in my inner eye, in my mind's eye, I could, like, vision was very, very hard for me, like imagining it. So I love that you brought up the other senses. So
Yeah, it's like if you think about, what does a rose smell like? All of a sudden you're getting that scent in your nose based on your memory. And then the brain, kind of fills in some of the other attributes. Maybe you feel the feeling of that sharp thorn, on the stem, or you actually do start to see the pictures of the petals, spiraling around. So, but yeah, that word perfectionism, I think, is probably a big common thing that gets in the way of people's visualization. So yeah, I think it'll be good for people to go into their mental colors and their inner vision with that kind of perfect imperfection kind of mentality of like, this is going to be unique, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And so, yeah, that I resonate with that. I feel like sometimes I'll get in my own way with trying to make it just too perfect. So
yeah, and there was this story, Bates, and I don't get the whole story together, but it was a woman, and what she could imagine the flowers and the meadows and everything, but then she had to imagine. She was asked to, I think, imagine color, and then yellow, and she thought of curtains in her house, and that created all that strain. So sometimes also, like you said in the beginning, like, why is that suddenly a strain? Like, why is yellow as a flower really relaxing, but then you think of yellow as in some other object, like a super stressor. So yeah.
yeah, and yeah, that's right. And it might change day by day, right? So it's different situations, different distances, different light levels, different objects. It can get pretty nuanced, but that's the exciting part, is everybody gets to kind of go on their own color journey and kind of figure out what's your palette, and what are you attracted to, what are you averse to. And honestly, sometimes if you find that there's certain things that you avoid that might actually be worth looking into, of like, why does this color make me feel this way? Is there anything I can do to kind of work with that, or maybe, have a new relationship with this color? So yeah, it's I think we're working on the more subtle levels here, but it can definitely add in a really nice, change or variety to the vision improvement process if we take some of the pressure off of the reading the eye charts and getting all the details to come in. And like you shared on Instagram this week about the color of the day game, where every day you choose a color to kind of be paying more attention to and being more sensitive to. And I love that so much, because it takes the pressure off the details. Because when I was myopic and I would take my glasses off and I would look off in the distance, I couldn't see the details in the distance, but I could still see all the colors. And so it's about, I think you said in your video, this helps you focus more on what you can see versus what you can't see. Because I could have either sat there frustrated, struggling, like, I really wish I could read that sign or see the brand of car that is. But I chose to say, wow, I can see that that's a red car, or like, whoa, that's a green sign way, a mile away. And then all of a sudden I'm in a totally different headspace, because I'm like positive and I'm excited and I'm encouraged, versus like, I can't read that, like I'm a failure. And interestingly, when I would get into that color perception, sometimes I would get clarity and the details would come through. So once again, it's kind of a roundabout way to get the improvement, but it can really work.
Yeah, because you focus on relaxation and not talking about all the things that are not working, which is how our humans' minds are often designed, like focusing on the negative. So yeah, I love that idea. And I think also paying, like I always say, eyesight happens only in the present moment. And so often our mind is not in the present moment. And color of the day is just one of those things where you're like, oh, I had no idea. I used to, when I lived in Germany, I used to take the train, and it was fun every day, on the train to like look at for all the things that you were never aware of, that you just kind of didn't pay attention to. So yeah, so
like,
go ahead.
I was going to say, like you said earlier, taking things for granted, like even without leaving the house and going on a train trip, maybe later today, people can just walk around their home and realize a new color, even though they knew it was already that color. It's just like, oh yeah, look at that. There it is. It's green or it's orange or whatever.
Everybody watching. Oh, we have questions on YouTube. I wasn't paying attention. Pick a color, everybody. Put in the chat what color you're going to look out for. And if you've done this for a while and you're not new to this, you can, instead of just saying red, you can be like burgundy red, or you could be, so get very specific, a lime green, or whether it's just green. So you can get really nuanced and get more interested in specific shades. But put in the chat, I'm curious, on YouTube too. Okay, I see turquoise here. Oh, that's here. I wear that right now. I love that color. Okay, so let me see if there's any question. I don't want to interrupt you, Nathan, if you have more things to share before I know you want to talk about Color Week also.
Yeah, that was, if people, we have a pretty cool event coming up in the next 2 weeks, starting on the Spring Equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. And maybe I could just pull up the flyer real quick, because it kind of gives the whole schedule here. I'm a part of a group called Color Lights World Project, and we're going to be doing this Color Days 2022. And so the way it works is every 2 days, there's going to be a new color. So on March 21st and 22nd, we're starting with white, which contains all the colors. And the cool thing about this group is it's very international. So Gabrielle Buresh-Teichmann is from Austria. Starting on the 23rd, we're going to go into yellow with Masako Shimizu, who's from Japan. Then 2 days later, we're going into orange. Christiana Verzbova is from Austria as well. Akal Matthews on March 27th is green. It's from the Netherlands. Rike is from Denmark. So on the 29th, she's going to be teaching about red. I talked a little bit about black today, but I'm going to go deeper into that on March 31st and the 1st. And then we're finishing up with blue with Lean. She's from South Africa. And so how this is going to work, it's going to be on our Facebook group. And you can join the group, and you're going to see on these dates, there's going to be a post, and that's going to include a poll. So we're trying to get people to interact, and there's going to be a little bit of a teaching about the color, a question about the color where you can actually answer the poll. And then we're encouraging people to also leave comments, kind of like you just have been here on Zoom and on YouTube, of, sharing some of your feedback and some of your experiences. What I'm really excited about is how this is such a global group, is that we're going to be able to interact with people from different countries and see how different people interpret colors and experience it. Because coming back to my cultural anthropology research paper, color is different depending on where you live and your language and how your community works. So I'm really excited to see how it goes. And even though it is like a 2-week window, it's going to be up on the Facebook group indefinitely. So if you're watching this later, you can always still go and check out the event. I'm sure we'll be doing something like this again in the future too.
That sounds super exciting. I'm definitely going to participate. And it is on Facebook, so you have to join the Facebook group. And I love our olive green. We have some really cool colors: periwinkle, teal, green, violet. Yeah, it's like I'm going to do pink today. I'm going to do just a pink Like mine, this one little bracelet here. See how many shades of pink this one has alone, you know? So
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any closing? I'm just looking at questions if there's any questions. So you answered that earlier about the certain brand of color lenses. You did said here, I think Dr. Jacob Lieberman uses color therapy with specific colors. I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning, I've got these podcasts, and in I think it was the December 2021 episode, I interviewed Jacob Lieberman about his spectral receptivity system, which is his version of the colored lenses. So yeah, if our talk today piqued your interest, you could search for that on YouTube or on the podcast app. And we go really deep into, he has a pretty unique way of guiding people through this color experience that's not necessarily by the books. So I kind of like how he puts his own spin on it.
Yeah, he's a super cool guy. Just like Ray Gottlieb, very inventive and very expressive, and with his beautiful blue eyes. And I think it's interesting when it comes to color. You know, there's aura colors, there is color personality tests. I mean, there's so much around colors that it's such an endless topic. We could go on and on, but I love how you brought it back to the Bates method and how really Bates really worked mostly with the mind or the imagination and memory, and using like, I love how you also got very clear on how, because people feel like they have to imagine something. And I remember I was in the yoga training long time ago, and they said, you know, imagine on the inside of your eyelids as if there's a movie projector. And that was so much strain for me, because I'm like, I don't see my inner eyelids as a movie project, you know, as a like, that brought me back to my old days where I was trying really hard, and I'm like, okay, forget about this. I'm just imagining this stuff in my mind versus, so yeah, I think there's a lot of times this eye strain, this effort that's always going outward versus letting things come to you. And I love how you talked about colored light comes to you, you know, and even reflective light at the end, even though it's reflective and it's a different quality for sure, it's never as pure as an art director or designer. Printed colors, we could never get the same brightness as we could with, like, you know, the old days, transparencies. Remember when you get the old like slideshows, yeah. You know, we could never got the same intensity of color that you got, that you can print versus that you can see. But at the end of the day, it's all you receive the colors, right? You don't have to try so hard here. And I think that's where my eye strain originated, was always trying to see here in the eye versus in my head, in the brain where we actually see. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, hopefully, you know, color can help sort of help people with that teaching and with that experience. Cause I was the same way. I always felt like I had to kind of reach out and pull things towards me. And a lot of this stuff has helped me sit back and relax and allow things to come. And yeah, I think the thing that helped me with the most with that was just realizing that there's nothing faster than light. You know, the speed of light is kind of the standard for, you know, that doesn't get faster than that. So it's pretty futile to try and go and catch the light. You know, it's going to already be inside your body through your eyes by the time you even make that effort. So
I love that, remembering how fast light is. And somewhere I read, and I have no idea how they measured it, but it apparently, from the moment the light hits your cornea, it's like 423 miles per hour by the time it hits your visual cortex, which I guess that's a little slower than light speed, because it still has to go through your optic nerve into your brain, but it's very, very fast. And the idea that we can, with effort and straining, that we can kind of somehow see better, faster is, yeah, you're right. I love that. Futile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't see any more questions. So thank you there's actually somebody, the Erlen method. Yes, Erlen method. I don't know. I know Erlen. I know a little bit about it, but I'm not an expert in it. So that's another whole topic. I do have to get her on the podcast. You know, do you want to add anything else to close this off in terms of any final words about colors and Bates and vision improvement?
I just, yeah, I don't know. I really got it. I started off with just the Bates system and the Eyesight primarily, but when you and I went to Europe in 2019 for the Vision Conference, I noticed that there was an International Light Association conference like 2 weeks before that. So I was like, oh, I'll just go earlier and see what that's all about. And that really has opened me up to all this stuff, really. I mean, I really wasn't aware of the importance of how color and light affects our neurology and biology and chemistry and sleep and health and mental wellness. And so I just, encourage people to take it seriously and just look into it and realize that even though light is this intangible thing that we can't, touch and grab and hold, it is literally all around us all the time, even at night. And so it's kind of this invisible force that's around us. And if, like you said, if we take it for granted or we don't really see any reason to pay attention to it, it can kind of just pass us by. So I really see it as a critical part of my life in terms of the quality of it, or, like you said, the vividness of it. If I can just turn up the color dial a little bit, it's like I see the world differently. So just hoping that this opens people up to some new ways of thinking about their world and how they perceive it, both on the outside with light and color, but then also, getting people excited to journey within and close the eyes and withdraw the senses inward and really play with the role that color plays inside your body as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. And we can put a link for the International Light Association into the chat, into the YouTube chat as well. My last question to you is, so you talk about that you have this like red-green color blindness. And as far as I know, there's really from the physical aspect, right, versus your imagination and actually, but have you noticed any improvements in that on the physical or the mental aspects?
Yeah. Like I said, those Ishihara tests, it seemed like I was getting better and better at differentiating the numbers in there. Yeah.
Here, like I want to show
yeah. Perfect. Exactly. Yeah. So I would test those and, but I want to get some of those that you have, the actual paper ones, because a lot of the ones I was using were digital, and you never know with the display or the color hue on your monitor or whatever. So that's kind of the more official one. But yeah, it since it wasn't something that I was like actually diagnosed with, and it was more of an anecdotal thing that I realized through looking at these charts and stuff. I don't have as much of a before and after kind of tracking thing with it, other than my personal experience of things. I feel like my differentiation between hues is a little more sensitive. We didn't touch on this topic of the red infrared light therapy, but that is one of the purposes of the red and infrared light, is to essentially recharge the cones and actually get them producing more energy through the mitochondria and helping you with contrast, telling the difference between not only light and dark, but also different shades of color and hues of color. So that's also a practice I picked up at the light conference, and I've kept up with, of using the red infrared light therapy devices. And I feel like that has also been a help for me. That's kind of a opening up a Pandora's box with the red infrared light thing, but there's a lot of information out there that people can look about photobiomodulation, which is kind of the long word for, red light therapy, low level laser therapy.
Studies have shown that they can help rejuvenate the mitochondria in older adults, and they did studies with mice and then now with humans. So that is really promising, that we can kind of improve or restore some of that ability that we lose with age. And there's a lot of different tests. I'm going to find some and put in the notes underneath the YouTube, and also, but there's a lot of different, like, Ishihara tests online, and also the color sensitivity test. And I think it's a really good idea to continue to practice those things and just really, train your brain, because we can if we consistently, and if we relax. So it all comes back to relaxation, right? Like we can see those colors and those shades. The more we relax, the more we strain, we might not really notice the difference, and being aware of this. So we have to come to a close. Thank you so much, Nathan, for being here, and subscribe to his 2 podcasts. the Better Eyesight magazine. I think it's bettereyesightmagazine.com or what is the exact URL?
BetterEyesightPodcast.com.
BetterEyesightPodcast.com. And then the other one is?
That's the Naked Eye podcast. So that's just on my main website, integraleyesight.com. Or you can look it up on your podcast apps. And I do usually put them up on YouTube as well if you search for the Naked Eye podcast.
And if you want to, like the documentary that you and Barry Ocketel produced together, Vision 2020, that's I think also on your website. That is a really great documentary that you can, I think, rent really inexpensively for a couple of dollars. That really, I think you guys interviewed like over 20 teachers worldwide, and this is a really great, insight,
including you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the late Roberto Kaplan, who passed away shortly after your interview. So it's a really great movie to watch if you're interested in natural vision improvement in general. And yes, there's you have also a great YouTube channel with lots of great videos. So thank you so much, Nathan, for being here. And we will now talk a little bit more amongst my Clear Vision Club tribe. And then goodbye, YouTube. We see you on next week. And oh yeah, people said it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, great. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Okay.